So, Dad, was some very sad news for the hockey world and for the Cherry family. Rene Robert passed away.
Yeah, and he sure liked the family. He was at the family all the time, and you were one of his favorites, didn't he?
Well, I remember he was one of Blue's favorites,
Yes.
too. I remember he used to come in all the time, and Blue wasn't the friendliest dog. I mean, she picked and chose who she enjoyed, whose company. And I remember Rene would come in, and they would just smother him with kisses. I don't know. I
I think
think
it must have been. I started to
Well,
think it was
Blue
his
was a
aftershave.
female.
Yeah, Blue is a female.
Yeah, he was
but Rene
good-looking.
always smelled well, so I think it might have been
Yeah, he
the
looked
aftershave.
good,
So
too.
one time he came over with a bunch of friends over, and he called Blue and he snapped his fingers, which was a big mistake with Blue. You don't snap your fingers, right? And then she didn't come. She just looked at him, and he snapped, and he walked away and sort of embarrassed Rene. Oh, wait, Blue, what's the matter? It
He
was
said,
Blue
don't like me anymore. I said,
Yeah,
"Now
it
you
was
snap your
funny.
fingers."
It was funny.
And I
He's a great
remember,
guy.
I remember Blue looking at me and says, "Who the is this guy think he is?" Snapping his fingers at me and turned around and walked back. to her
That
bed.
I think I mentioned that before in our movie when Jared Kiso, who
Yeah.
played you and all that, Blue was underneath the table. There was a scene, and I was there when they were filming it, and Jared was snapping his fingers at Blue, and I said, "Oh, I got to do quality control." I says, "Dad would never snap his fingers at Blue, so they had to do the whole scene over again." I said, "Jared, don't snap your fingers to
Well,
Blue."
Rene was he was a good-looking guy.
Oh boy, was he
Yeah,
ever!
and he was on that French Connection line, and that was a big back in those days. What would you
Well,
say?
yeah, he was. So he was playing with Buffalo, French Connection,
Yeah,
Gilbert Perreault, Rick Martin, and Rene Robert. So their two big years were 74, 75. That would have been our first year in Boston, and 75, 76. And those 2 years, that line combined for 577 points. I think they had like 259 goals in 2 years, that line. So
They were really flying.
well, I remember though I think Rene. A lot of people who remember him and remember that first year, they went to the finals against the Flyers.
That in the fog, and that was Lorenz. I think that was the year he hit the bat too.
Yeah, that was and I don't forget what game it was, but it was in Buffalo, and it was really humid and it was warm out, and there was fog all over the ice, and you couldn't you couldn't see.
You really couldn't see.
It was it was right out of a movie, like it was a Stephen King movie. So I forget who. I think the referee was John McCauley. He'd blow the whistle, and both teams would get on the ice.
And they used towels too. Yeah.
And they'd skate around as fast as they
With
could,
towels.
and they would the fog would raise up to the rafters, and then they play. You could slowly see the fog coming back down, and during that game, a bat flew out of the rafters, and who hit it?
Jimmy Lorenz.
Jimmy Lorenz killed it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
he killed. Yeah, I'm sorry to say.
So they
the
called
bat.
him Batman for the rest of his
Yeah,
career.
I remember him hitting the bat.
And then Rene got the winner.
Oh, I was standing back of the goal, and it was fog, and Perrant was in the net,
Yeah.
and he just let a slap shot go. It reminded me of Lafleur's shot, and just a screamer.
He had two overtime winners that year.
Did he?
Yeah.
Boy, he could really slap a puck.
So, Dad, Rene played for you in Colorado.
Yeah, he played for me in Colorado. I think it was we traded him for John Van Boxmeer. They needed a defenseman. I think he ended up John Van Boxmeer going to Rochester. Never played. And what happened was, I think he won Coach of the Year.
Yeah, he ended up coaching.
He ended up coaching. So John Van Boxmeer. Anyhow, we had Rene, and this floater of floaters got knocked out, and he was knocked cold. And the doctor had him in the room and everything, and he turned and all the players could hear him too. It was great, and I heard him too. And the doctors turned to the trainer and he says he doesn't know who he is. And as Rene walked by, he said, "Tell him he's Wayne Gretzky."
Well, I remember you were telling a funny story. Him and Lanny McDonald got
Oh.
along. And a lot of people will just tell quick that Lanny, you got Lanny from Colorado, and he didn't want to come. And
Yeah,
'cause
Adele
his
was having a baby.
and so you just told him to show up for the games.
I just show up to games and you don't have to do any practices. So in any game, I got 25 goals in 45 games or something ridiculous.
Yeah, he ended up with 39.
Sounds like
But he only dropped in for the games. He played the games.
What a deal.
Yeah, he loved it. And Rene said, the stick boy spends more time in the dressing room than you, Lanny.
It's funny, Dad. You talk about Colorado, but you look at, Lanny ended up with 40 goals. Rene got 28 goals for you. Lucien Dubois had
Bobby
Schmatz, and you had
Rene.
You had Mike Christie. You were just on the cusp.
And Rene and Delorme.
Ronnie Delorme, yeah, and you had a tough team, and you were just on the cusp of doing great things. But
goalie, all we needed was a goalie, and I'm not going into Hardy again. But I got one more story to tell about Rene. He would tell you what a good friend he was. And when I got fired by Colorado, I come here to Toronto, Mississauga, and I couldn't get a job. It was times were tough. And I remember Mike Murphy was with Molson's Brewery, and he was a dear friend of Rene's. And I know Rene went to Mike Murphy, who went to Molson's, and got me to do the banquets. I wasn't making much money, but I'll tell you one thing, it sure helped the family.